Welcome back to Newsmax Now. I'm pleased to be joined by former federal prosecutor Larry Klayman. Larry is also the founder of Freedom Watch. Thanks for joining us today.
Nice to see you this evening.
All right, so let's talk a little bit more about that GOP baseball practice shooting that took place earlier today in Alexandria, Virginia. Just to recap, Congressman Steve Scalise was shot earlier today along with an aide and two Capitol police officers. President Trump announced earlier today that the shooter, 66-year-old James Hodgkinson, was also killed. Larry, before we delve more into it, just first off, what was your reaction?
Well, my first reaction was relief. Thank God no one was killed. I pray for the people that were injured that they'll pull through. I understand Representative Scalise was in critical condition earlier today. I hope he's out of that by now. But this is part and parcel to the hatred that's been whipped up against Trump. I mean, Nancy Pelosi came out there and congratulated the Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, said, "We're great, we're all coming together, kumbaya." But just a few weeks ago, she was at a rally in California, in Sacramento, where the then head of the Democratic Party in California was screaming, "F President Trump," and she was laughing and carrying on. So they have brought this kind of hatred forward, and they're largely responsible for what's happening because this is a green light, much like Louis Farrakhan and Nation of Islam gave a green light to kill cops every day. And Black Lives Matter, certainly the people there. So this is terrible. You know, and there's an irony here. I don't mean to make fun of this tragedy, but, you know, we have a so-called investigation of Russian collusion. Well, Bernie Sanders is a socialist. Bernie Sanders honeymooned in Moscow. We have now someone that came forward who was a Bernie Sanders supporter who has now shot up, you know, a lot of Congress and the aides out there. Should we have an investigation of a Russian connection? That's how absurd this whole thing is today. And that's what's whipping up and fomenting this hatred, this constant drumbeat from Capitol Hill with this phony investigation of a Russian connection.
Just to be clear, are you pointing the finger towards Bernie Sanders?
No, I'm not. I'm being facetious. Okay.
I just want to make sure we clarify that.
That is.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
What I'm saying is that it's theater of the absurd. Okay. I mean, one could make the same argument that Bernie should be investigated because he has ties to Moscow and Russia. He was honeymooned there, and his supporter now almost killed people. But at the same time, Trump is being vilified. He's being investigated in a ridiculous, manufactured investigation. I was doing that with some humor to try to show how, frankly, ridiculous and stupid this whole thing is. But it's creating violence. It's giving people a means to express themselves in this violent way. And it's very, very dangerous. And we can see that the country is in a civil war right now. I advocate, you know, peaceful revolution, Miranda. You know that. I want to bring this country back to the vision of the founding fathers. It's far from that right now. A la Martin Luther King, a la Lech Walesa in Poland. But these people are going to the streets, and they're going to provoke some ultra-right agitators or whatever to react. And then you're going to have really a lot of bloodshed in the streets. I don't want to see that.
Well, let's talk more about the reaction to this shooting, because you're not the first one to say that there might be people on the left inciting this type of violence, maybe not knowingly. But earlier today, Donald Trump Jr. replied with this after a political commentator tweeted, "Events like today are exactly why we took issue with New York elites glorifying the assassination of our president." He's, of course, referencing Shakespeare in the Park's modern rendition of Julius Caesar, which we talked about on this show earlier this week. That main character, Julius Caesar, appears to be modeled after the president. Some sponsors have now pulled their financial support due to the show's graphic assassination of that Caesar/Trump. Do you think it's fair, though, to tie the Julius Caesar play and the Kathy Griffin beheading photo to this shooting, or is way too far? Absolutely.
No, absolutely. Look, it's a combination of things. You've got these people in Capitol Hill, the Pelosi's, the Schumers, the Mark Warners on the Senate Intel Committee, Senator Blumenthal, others who are whipping up this hatred towards Trump. They're even using profane language from time to time, you know, to get these people really agitated. So you've got it there. And then you've got people like George Soros who are financing these protests, so-called protests that turn violent at Berkeley. You know, I just brought a lawsuit last week against Berkeley for beating up a young gay woman, a really fine person named Kiara Robles, who was out there. And then you've got leftist Hollywood and the entertainment industry, which stokes it. And couple that with the New York Times, the Washington Post, the LA Times. it's no wonder these people are doing what they're doing. And frankly, this is just the beginning. And that's what's so scary about it. So I take my hat out to Jeff Sessions yesterday, the Attorney General, who I believe is a very honest man. I've known him for a long time. I had a case in front of him as a young lawyer in Mobile when he was U.S. Attorney. He pushed back. And it's time for these cowardly Republicans to start pushing back. They just take it. And when you watch the testimony in front of the Senate Intel Committee and you watch the chairman, Richard Burr, I mean, he's just a lapdog to Senator Mark Warner, who's the minority, who is stoking this violence along with his colleagues because he's accusing the president of treason. He's accusing the president of collaborating with the Russians. And that's why I facetiously referred to Bernie Sanders earlier, is because the left has an affinity to the former Soviet Union and to Russia. But all of a sudden, Russia's terrible. Okay, what's wrong with talking to Russia? There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, you don't want to have a third world war. So this is where we're at right now, and all these various entities, okay, whether it's the mainstream media, whether it's leftist Hollywood, whether it's the George Soroses who are financing this violence, whether it's President Barack Obama, former president in his home in Kalorama, who's working with Soros to whip up this kind of incitement, as he did, you know, with Black Lives Matter, where one policeman a day was nearly being killed during his administration. It's all coming together, and this country is on the verge of exploding. And when the left causes this, you're going to see some radical people on the right, God forbid, I don't support that, but they're going to react. You're going to have militias out there in the streets, and we're going to have bloodshed because people are not going to take it sitting down.
I want to get to Sessions in just a moment, but if I can, Larry, some congressional leaders have been calling for common ground and unification in light of today's shooting, but that certainly didn't stop nearly 200 Democratic members of Congress from filing a federal lawsuit against the president today. Now, according to the New York Times, they're accusing the president of violating the Constitution by profiting from business dealings with foreign governments. The lawmakers claim Trump has ignored a constitutional clause that prohibits federal officials from accepting gifts from foreign powers, excuse me, without congressional approval. This is the third such lawsuit against Trump since he became president. The Times writes that this case is part of some kind of coordinated effort to get Trump to reveal his tax returns. I'm sorry, rather, do you think that this is kind of this effort to get Trump to reveal his tax returns, or do you think there may be some other reason behind this?
No, it's part and parcel, Miranda, it's part and parcel of this whole campaign of hatred. You know, if you want to file a case, an emoluments clause case, which this is, for a president or a federal official to profit from dealings with foreign governments, number one, Trump has separated out his corporations. His two sons are running it. He's not involved anymore. That can be obviously confirmed in a variety of different ways. But look at who signed this complaint. There were over 100 Democrat senators and congressmen, everybody from Nancy Pelosi to Chuck Schumer to Blumenthal up there in Connecticut to even Bernie Sanders. Here he is again. And this is a way to destroy the president. And, you know, frankly, I haven't had a chance to check yet, but with 70 to 80% of the judges now being Clinton and Obama appointees, they might very well succeed in court because these judges, a lot of them have no sense of the law. They don't follow the statutes or the Constitution. And they're part of this. I forgot to mention the judges are also part of this whipping up of violence and hatred towards Trump because, as you've seen in various decisions lately, particularly in Hawaii or in Washington State or the Ninth Circuit with regard to the so-called travel ban, these judges can't resist taking a shot at Trump and calling him a racist and basically taking him down to ground level. So this is what we live in today. This is the world. It's a war. I'm seeking to do it peacefully and legally through the courts to push back. But we are up against a lot right now. And today it broke out in Virginia. You're going to see more of this.
Larry Klayman, thanks so much for your time today. Always a pleasure to have you.
Thanks. God bless, Miranda.